I'm the owner of Lara Quaker Interactive and the creative director of the Project Inside Out website. And I was lucky enough to lead a fabulous team of digital producers, designers, illustrators, and programmers while working very closely with Elizabeth and Renee. So as I'm sure you all know at this point in the summit, Project Inside Out is, of course, a resource for change makers to understand the emotional and psychological realities that influence behavior and climate and sustainability issues. So the goal of the website was to distill this vast amount of information taken from Renee's work and research over the years of her clinical practice. And this information was informed by a group of advisors, clinical practitioners, all who've been applying psychology to the climate and environmental crisis. So basically, there was a lot of information that we had to organize in such a way that someone could come to the site for the first time, skim through everything, and easily digest information as a change maker. But it was also for people who are change makers and working in the field and being able to access this information in depth. So that was a big challenge in our planning. So what I want to do today is to walk you through a few key parts of the website and give you a little bit of history on how we got there. So Pedro, I'm wondering if I can share my screen with everyone now.
Yes.
Okay, I see I'm able to.
Do you see the share screen button?
Yeah.
There we go, you got it.
Okay, fabulous. So I wanted to take you to the home page first, and the home page was done in more of a magazine format because we wanted it to appeal to a wider audience. And the role of the home page is to present Project Inside Out as an option for another way for change makers to do their work. We wanted basically to be able to pull people into the content of Project Inside Out and introduce that first notion of becoming a guide. And in a really easy and digestible and beautiful way, we wanted to pull people into the story. So, and introduce them to guiding as a new mindset. So of course, our intention with the homepage was to introduce these concepts, and we spent many hours figuring out what the user journey would be. So that's how I'm going to take you through the site today. In that we had a user journey in our mind, but of course, people can jump through to the different parts of the site. So on the first page that you go through, we wanted to give people an overview and to give them a little bite-sized taste of what will come through in the rest of the site. There's videos on the landing page of each of these pages that you can watch. I won't show you right now. You can go into those videos yourself. And we wanted to give people an idea of what they would expect as they went through the site. So we have illustrations that were created for each of the different sections of the site. And we spent many hours with an amazing illustrator talking about each and every one of the concepts so that she could really understand and create something that reflected the nuances of each of the sections. So she really learned about becoming a guide. But I want to dive right into the change maker, because I know I don't have a lot of time. So you can go in and explore this page. Basically, it's a page that will give you an overview. I'm going to jump into the what kind of change maker are you? Their interactive tool. So what we wanted to do here was engage the individual coming to the site to take a step back and assess how they were showing up in their work so that they could come at their work with more intention, clarity, and impact as they moved forward as change makers. So our goal was to help people understand the different styles and approaches to building out campaigns and really self-reflecting. It's an individual activity. So the big question for us was, how do you bring this concept to a user in a really fun and practical way? So what we came up with is there are 6 questions that were put together by Renee and the amazing writer, Erin Kafal. And each question in this quiz was really carefully thought out. And so you can go through and read the questions, but each of the answers are given a value. So I've already filled this out just for time, but as you can see, each of these answers have a value. And when you get your results, all of these words are calculated and visually represented in these bubbles. So the answers that I gave were a writer, so that is the highest value in the questions. But what we wanted to do with this is to be able to show people where these answers really fit in. And so I think we created it so it was fun, it was educational. You can click through, open and close different sections so that you can see how the answers fall into these different sections. We took a lot of care in color coding each of these different sections so that we could connect them to the rolling slider, which describes each of the different sections. So you can roll through the slider and understand at a glance and very quickly what each of the sections are. So again, we thought through our user journey, and we're encouraging people at the bottom to continue their journey. They can either go back to the overview or they can go into the guiding principles, which is really the backbone of the site. And we spent many months in building out the wireframes and writing and designing the information that would go into each of these sections. So above the fold on each of the pages is an illustration. So we took great care in creating these illustrations and making sure that they fit in with the nuance of all of the information that's given out. I won't click into it, but on each of the above the fold pages is a more in-depth video with Renee, in this particular case, talking about what it means to be a guide. Our job on the website was to gather these guiding principles into short, deep, and understandable, doable actions. So each of the guiding principles, as I'm sure you've heard from the discussions earlier, how each of these guiding principles relate to each other, but they're intended to be taken as a whole on the website. Again, at the bottom of the guiding principles page, we've created a PDF that people can download, print off if they want, but there are options to take this offline as well if you wanted to bring it to your team. So I'm not gonna go into each of the sections just because we don't have enough time. But what I will do is go into one of the pages and talk about how we've divided up the information. Each of the guiding principles are designed, written, and broken up in much of the same way. And there's an illustration in each of the sections that is associated with that guiding principle, in addition to each of the guiding principles being color-coded. So above the fold, there's a video that talks about that principle more in depth, and one or two sentences describing that principle. Then there's a section that talks about the principle more in depth, and then there's a section that talks about how to do this, how you can apply this guiding principle. And then as you scroll further down the page, there's an accordion that breaks the concept down into doable steps. So within each guiding or each step is either a tool. In some instances, we've added a video. And these tools are tagged in each case so that you know whether it's an individual activity that you do yourself, if it's a paired activity, if it's an activity versus a guide that you read, or a template that you can apply within your own work. So the goal within these sections was to keep the information clean and calm so that you could navigate through the site without overwhelm. We have on the left side the 3 A's. So this was a big challenge for the design team because they applied to all of the guiding principles, but in fact were not a guiding principle. So one of our challenges was to figure out how to keep this on the same level as the guiding principles. So we separated it out on the left, and again, it's divided up into the same format template as the guiding principles. So you can go through the 3 A's and the guiding principles on your own time, but there was great, but just know that there was great care taken in building out the UX design and illustrations of each of these sections. So the next section that I want to go into are the principles in action. So the goal of this page was to help you and your team move towards using the PIO approach together. So on this page, we have the interactive tool, the quadrant to engagement, and this is meant to be used together with your team, and I'll go through that in a second. But I just wanted to talk about the stories from the field. So the stories from the field are really important in showing how other organizations have used this content. And PIO did a pilot with Green Faith to flesh out a lot of the materials. And they also held a lab with organizations to test a lot of the materials together. So I won't go into these sections here, but just know that there's more in-depth information that you can read about within these different sections. What I do want to jump to is the quadrant of engagement. So this was a tool designed by Renee Lertzman to help you quickly narrow in on what your primary theories of change are, and to benefit knowing where you and your organization fall within those 4 theories of change, and to answer the question of how you're working within your organization. So the goal of this is to engage your team in conversations. And so our goal was to be able to talk about the different theories of change, keep the information very clean, and introduce the 4 different sections. So we've got experience, systems, behavior, messaging, and we wanted to be able to have users at a glance understand what each of those sections meant. So we've got the 1 sentence, messaging emphasizes narrative, experience emphasizes feelings and conversation, systems emphasizes solutions. And then on the right side, we wanted to have more in-depth information on each of those sections. So as you scroll down, you've got 26 questions about how your organization is currently working. And again, these questions were worked on with Renee and with Erin and with the team, and every question is very carefully worded, and I won't click on each of the sections, but there's a answer that veers on never and goes to always. So I'm just going to jump to the results that I had done previously. So we've calculated within each of these sections, whatever answers you gave, where you fit within each of these sections. And we wanted people to be able to see the affirmative actions so that you could see and talk about within your organization where you fall. And so we have the answers that you can go back to and reflect on as a team. So there's more information. There's a lot of theory that's inside of the quadrant that you can read about, and you can also download the quadrant to your desktop. Now I want to jump quickly to the tools. These are the tools. We've got the interactive, the 2 interactive tools. What kind of change maker are you? The quadrant 2 engagement. And then we have the many, many other tools that are divided up into guides. So guides that you can read, activities, templates that you can use within your organization. We have workshop tools and then additional resources. We have the quadrant 2 engagement that you can download and do offline, and we've got the guiding principles, again, that you can print off and do offline. So each of the tools are tagged, so you know if it's an individual activity or if you do that as a paired activity with your team or a group activity. And then we've organized all of these into the different guiding principles that they fit within. So the intention is to build on this as we move forward and find out what's needed from you, the change makers. And we're so excited to be releasing this into the world. And the intention is for everybody to be able to use these tools. The first time that you go into the tools, you'll be asked to give us your email address and name and organization, but we have cookies on the site because I've already downloaded them. You will not be asked again after that one single time. So we're excited to see what tools you're using and to hear about how you're in fact integrating these tools into your work so that we can make more tools that are even better and designed for you. So we'd also love to hear stories and maybe even be able to build on the stories from the field and learn how you're integrating these tools into your work. So Elizabeth mentioned that there's a survey that she created that we would love for you to fill out at the end of this workshop. And I'd like to really quickly thank Elizabeth and Renee for letting my team work on really such an amazing and great and important project. So I'm going to transition this back to Renee now. And again, thank you for taking the time to listen to this.